Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the high-stakes, often misunderstood world of global environmental negotiations. You know, these are the rooms where the future of our planet is debated, one grueling session at a time.
I mean, just think about that quote for a second. That's how diplomats from small island nations actually describe these talks. For them, this isn't some abstract policy debate or a chat about economic trade-offs. No, it is a raw, emotional plea for their very survival. Their entire existence is on the line.
And yet, despite all that drama, despite the constant news reports about gridlock and failure, here's a pretty wild fact. In just the last few decades, over 700 of these multilateral environmental agreements have been signed. So how can both of those things possibly be true?
Right? It's a huge question. On one hand, you hear about failure, but on the other, you see hundreds of agreements. So what is really going on in these rooms? Are these talks actually getting anything done? Let's dig in and uncover what this world of environmental diplomacy really looks like.
Okay, so the first thing we absolutely have to understand is that what we all see on the news, the formal speeches and the big press conferences, that is almost never where the real important work actually happens.
And this contrast is absolutely key. The most important, game-changing deals, they're not struck in some grand hall with all the cameras rolling. Nope, they're forged in these small, informal huddles, often in the middle of the night, when just sheer exhaustion and urgency finally force a breakthrough.
It's this incredibly high-pressure, deeply human process. It's all driven by persuasion, by resilience, and sometimes even by calculated tactics like strategic silence, where a country will just say nothing at all to force others to reveal their positions.
All right, so let's build on that. Let's take a look at some of the invisible forces, the kind of rules of the game that are shaping these dramatic negotiations from behind the scenes.
Now, this is super interesting, because leadership here isn't just about being the biggest country in the room. Sure, you have structural leadership, like China, which is based on its sheer scale, and you have directional leadership, like the EU, which tries to lead by setting an example at home. But, and this is so important, even small nations like Tuvalu can show instrumental leadership by being skillful negotiators and proposing creative solutions that change the entire conversation.
This brings us to a crucial point. Every single negotiator is playing two games at once. At the international table, they're trying to find common ground with other countries. But at the exact same time, they have to go back home and sell that deal to their own governments, industries, and voters. It's an incredible balancing act.
And as if that wasn't complicated enough, get this. On top of all the national delegations, you've got over 20,000 non-state observers, from environmental NGOs to major corporations, all there at a single conference, each one trying to influence the outcome. The complexity is just immense.
So, given all this complexity, it's really no surprise that many of these talks are publicly seen as failures, especially when they don't end with a major binding agreement. But that might just be the wrong way to look at it.
Which brings us to this key question. Are these negotiations just a big waste of time if nothing gets signed at the end? Well, the answer reveals the real, often hidden impact of environmental diplomacy.
Because the true success isn't always a signed document. It's the slow, transformative effect these talks have on the world. Even so-called failed negotiations can act as a powerful engine for spreading new ideas, for shifting what the world considers normal, and inspiring real policy changes back home.
Take China, for example. The ideas and arguments that get kicked around in these global forums, like framing climate action as an economic opportunity, not just a cost, directly influence the country to embed low-carbon development goals right into its national 5-year plan.
And we see the same pattern in South Korea. After being deeply involved in these international discussions, it went home and launched a national green growth strategy and even established a global green growth institute to champion that model around the world.
And then there's Norway. It participated in these talks and then went home to make one of the world's most ambitious climate pledges, to be carbon neutral by 2030. These aren't just coincidences. They are the direct results of this ongoing diplomatic engagement.
All of this, it really reveals the ultimate and maybe most important purpose of environmental diplomacy. It's not just about the text of a treaty.
At the end of the day, it acts as a global engine for transmitting ideas. It redefines what nations see as possible, what they see as profitable, and what they see as just. That is the real outcome.
a slow but powerful shift in our global consciousness.
But this leaves us with a final, crucial question. With sea levels rising and temperatures soaring on our rapidly warming planet, is the slow work of changing minds and shifting norms happening fast enough?